it's Henry here at Impact Eon. Hey, today we're going to do another part of the video, part 2 of the part 2 video on healing. Part 2 of part 2, 2.2. All right. Hey, last time I talked about faith and what faith is, and that it's it's the God kind of faith that persuades you. He persuades you. It's not you trying to persuade him that you actually believe. He persuades you, and you receive it by hearing the goodness of God. And Galatians 5 verse 6 says that faith works by love. It's knowing the love of God. That's where there's faith. You need to know the love of God. Faith is not a religious life or religious duties, or just because somebody does a bunch of things that they have faith, or that they have the God kind of faith. A lot of them live out of fear, not faith. Fear of judgment. He says that's not God's kind of love. It gets rid of fear. So faith works in love. It's God's kind of love that persuades you that he is good. You need to be persuaded that God is good. And it's not me trying to persuade you right now. You need to hear him. I believe he speaks individually to you, to people. I'm not telling you what you need to hear, who you need to listen to, but you need to hear the love of God. That's what persuades you, to hear God directly, what he's saying to you. And he speaks Jesus. Jesus, I believe, is perfect theology. You want to know who God is? Look at Jesus. Look what he did, and how he responded to people, how he healed people, and how he drove out demons, and how he was compassionate to them. He did it with his compassion. He was full of love. Compassion is this strong emotion that drives you, something that drives you deeply from the bottom of your being to act upon, to restore. God's kind of justice is restoring what's broken. Justice for God is not that he will have justice where he punish those that deserve to be punished. No, punishment is not God's kind of justice. Justice is where God restores what's broken, restores what's missing. That is God's kind of justice. That's the definition you'll look up in the Bible when he talks about the justice of God. That is restoring what was broken. When he sent his son, that was justice. He restored for something that was lost for humanity, and that was salvation. That was life. Man had lost life, had given up their lives to serve a different master, which was the devil. They submitted and listened to the devil above God, and therefore Jesus came to rescue. God and Jesus, Holy Spirit, working together to rescue and to restore humanity. That's God's kind of justice. All right? So just because a lot of people have a holy life and do things perfectly, doesn't mean they have faith. A lot of people, I believe, live in fear. They live in fear of judgment. Therefore, they confess their sins every Sunday. They pray every night for salvation again and again and again. Or they pray, oh, if it be thy will, because they're afraid that they don't know God's will. They believe God says no to them, right? So we need to look at Jesus, how he responded and how he dealt. Let's let him translate what God's will is about healing, all right? Let's let Jesus translate it. I'm going to talk about this part 2 of part 2. I'm going to talk about how Jesus healed, and he healed all. But we're hanging in this series, we're hanging our hat on this verse, John 10:10. It says, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came so that they would have life and have it abundantly." God came to give life. Jesus came to give life. He didn't come to give you sickness. He didn't come to make you poor. That was a result of the curse. But then Jesus says, he became the curse for us, and therefore I've poured out my life. Jesus was not just barely enough to get you into heaven. He was more than enough. A drop of blood is enough to save all of humanity. Just one drop of his blood was enough to make everyone righteous, and more than that, right? He says in Romans 5, he says, if he didn't hold back his son, how much more would he not give us all things? Last time I checked, the all word there means all things. Things, not just all spiritual things, but all things. If he doesn't hold back his son, his very best, his highest, if he doesn't hold back his own, his himself, if he doesn't hesitate to hold that back from you, how much more would he not give you everything else? How much more would he not want to get you healed? I believe he wants you to be healed more than you want to be healed. I believe, man, people, they are fight tooth and nail that they should be sick. They're fighting to stay sick. They want to be sick. They think that's like some sort of holy, righteous experience for them to make them more holy, and that these experiences will make them better on the other side. I believe you can learn things. You can learn a lot of lessons. But I believe the best thing for God is not to learn by hard knocks. A lot of people learn by hard knocks, but if sickness and disease and death is making people more holy, then we would have a lot of holy people. Then we would have a lot of really good people and clean and righteous people. But that's not the case. It's getting worse. Sickness is not from God. This is what we need to hear. And he doesn't just allow it. He doesn't just send the devil to do the dirty work, God's dirty work. All right? We're going to look at that in the next video, the next sermon. I'm going to talk about Job, and we're going to go through some of those weird things that we hear about in Job, some of the stuff that goes on in that book, because a lot of people hold Job, they follow Job instead, but I tell them, I follow Jesus. Job, then there's Jesus. All right? Everybody's like, well, what about Job? He was such a righteous man, and God sent the devil. All right, we're going to look at that. But today, right now, I want to look about, did Jesus provide healing on the cross? Did he heal people, and was it paid for on the cross? All right? First off, I'm going to say, if it was not paid for on the cross, he's not given it. Anything in life that you get from God, if it wasn't paid for by the cross, if it wasn't through the cross, through his giving his life, then he won't give it. All right? There's not Jesus dying on the cross and paying for your salvation, and then there's God that has a different way to try to get you things. Everything God did was through Jesus Christ. He is the living example of God the Father. He was the perfect representation. He was the only way. That's why Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He's the only way. There is no other way to receive anything from God but through Jesus. All right? So Jesus was the good guy, not the bad guy. So today we're going to look at Matthew chapter 8. There's so much more I could cover in the Bible about healing and how Jesus healed people, and different examples, different stories where we can show. And one part I definitely want to get to yet is, hopefully I can get to it, is where the disciples are trying to heal this child, or they're trying to drive out a demon, and then Jesus shows up, and then they're like, Jesus, and then he drives out the demon, heals the child, and then the disciples like, why couldn't we do it? Why couldn't we? What was it? And Jesus rebukes them off and says, you of little faith, you unbelieving people. He would say, oh, you worthless people, like you guys, how long do I have to be with you for you to believe? All right? And then it talks, and then they ask, why couldn't we do it? And he says, this only comes out by praying and fasting. All right, was it the demon that was more powerful than the other one? So you have to pray and fast harder for God to move his arm and to twist God's arm? No. The whole topic of that section is unbelief. I believe faith is there. Everybody received faith from Jesus. One person doesn't have more faith than the other, but I believe more people have more doubt than others. Doubt cancels the faith that's already in you. Believing more the things that you see, hear, touch, and feel, those are the things that negate, because God is not going to, faith is what he convinces you, but you need to operate in that faith. That's what you walk in, that faith. You believe what God convinced you to do. All right? All right, so Matthew 8 there's a few things that happen. All right? In the beginning, Jesus heals a leper. There's a leper that comes and says, I know you can heal me. He comes to Jesus and says, I know you have the power to heal me. And then it's like he doesn't know if it's his will. All right, this is the first story that I love where Jesus shows that it is his will, that is the will of God. Always, every time when somebody comes to him, it says so many times that all that came to him, he healed them all of them. He drove out demons. He cleansed them. He healed them. He made them well. Everyone that came to him, he did not get them to fill out an application to see if they qualified. Did you know that everyone that he ministered were not believers? They were not so-called Christians, what we would call Christians. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that in here to give you a brain cramp. Anyway, so he says he heals the leper. He says, of course it's my will. I'm just paraphrasing, but he says it is. Yes, I want to. He says, Jesus is not saying, yeah, of course I can do it, but I'm not sure if I want to today. Have you learned your lesson? Have you done this? Have you done this? No, he says, of course I want to. And then he reaches out, which shows compassion. For anyone to touch a leper back then, that shows compassion. All right? So he says, he reaches out, heals it, and immediately leprosy goes away. It disappears. It's not over time. It was not medicated. Immediately, he was cleansed. And then he says, don't say anything. Shh. See, there's another part. It's not to prove. If Jesus wanted to go and heal people to prove that he was God and that he was the truth, then he would have told them, go proclaim it all what I have done for you to show the world that I am Jesus. No. He said, be quiet, shut up, go show yourself to the priest. And he was still living under the law. Jesus still lived under the law. So therefore, he didn't tell them to not follow the law anymore. He told them to just still do it. But Jesus was the fulfillment. Jesus finished the law. Therefore, after his resurrection, law was no longer, right? That's what Paul talks about in Romans and in Galatians. And so there's a difference. The things that Jesus spoke about often, he spoke it under the law. He spoke things under people living under the law, all right? So anyway, he says, go show yourself that you are clean, and that way he could live with society, and that's was the requirement. Next thing, he goes to the captain's son. Guy comes and says, hey, my son is sick. Come and heal. And then he says, my son is sick, he needs healing. And Jesus says, yeah, I'll come to your place. Jesus offers to come to his place, if I remember correctly. All right. So don't hate on me if I'm missing some parts of these stories, right? And then the captain says, no, I understand an authority. I have people under my authority. I understand their authority. And okay, here's a key thing about faith. He says, say it, and then my son will be well. Just command it to happen, and it will happen. This guy understood power, all right? And then when Jesus heard this, he was amazed. Turned to those who were following him, he said, he was so amazed that he was like, before he did anything, he's like, guys, I tell you the truth, I haven't seen faith like this in all Israel. In all Israel. Okay, so there's many that got healed and delivered, right? It was their response. They knew something about Jesus. They came. They had faith to receive, and so on. And then so he says, I have not seen faith like this in all of Israel. This guy was convinced of the authority that Jesus worked under, that he was of a different kingdom. He understood kingdom. I believe we don't understand kingdom these days. Everything is about democracy. God's kingdom is not a democracy. It's not a voting system. Anyway, I'm going to stop right there. But anyway, so he says that just speak it and it will happen. And Jesus was amazed. That's like one of the few times he's amazed. He was amazed at their unbelief when he was in his hometown preaching. And now he's amazed at this faith. All right? He was amazed and he was convinced. This guy was convinced of who Jesus was and the authority that he worked under, right? And then in the next part of Matthew chapter 8, Jesus comes to Peter's house, and then Peter's mom is laying on the couch sick with a fever, and it says that evening many demon-possessed people who, like Jesus comes in and just touches her, and then fever leaves. Just like that. Nobody said anything. Jesus goes up to him and just loves on them. So, and then she was well. And it says that evening, many demon-possessed people were brought to Jesus. He cast out the evil spirits with a simple command, and he healed all the sick. It says he healed all. Last time I checked, the word all means all, everything. Everyone that came. Everyone that came to him. There's a part in the Bible where Jesus comes to his hometown, and he's preaching to them, and he does, I believe, one miracle or so. But he says he could not do many miracles in his hometown. Why? They did not believe. And you know how they did not believe? Why he could not believe? Because they didn't come to him. If they were not convinced of them healing him, the sick will not come to them, because if they're not convinced. If you were Jesus, or if I were Jesus, and you're not convinced that I could heal you, you won't come to me. And that's what Jesus happened in his hometown. They're like, don't we know this guy? We grew up with this guy. How could he? He's not the Messiah. He can't do that. That's basically what happened in his hometown. And he was amazed at their unbelief, that they would not believe it. Even though they'd probably seen it, they'd probably been around him when he did stuff, but they tried to explain it. You wouldn't believe how many Christians are trying to explain that these miracles away, that didn't really happen that way. It's not fake. And in this day and age, yeah, a lot of stuff can be fake. There is probably a lot of fake stuff out there to try to get people to follow certain people. That doesn't mean. And I love what a friend of my cousin once spoke. Johnny Froze once said this. He says, in order for there to be a fake, there has to be the real thing. So if there's fake healings, there's real healings. Right? So there has to be, if there's a fake, it just proves that there's the real one, the real deal. And I'm telling you, the devil can't make something of his own. He takes what is good and twists it, all right? But for some reason today we think they think that Jesus and the devil have switched roles, that if you go believing in healing and you're going to go healing ministry and do different things, drive out demons, they think it's of a demon. We're demon possessed and all kind of stuff, all right? But Matthew 8 verse 17, it says, this fulfilled the word of the Lord through the prophet Isaiah, who said, he took our sicknesses and removed our diseases. He took our sicknesses and removed our diseases. Another verse, 1 Peter 2 verse 24. He himself carried our sins in his body on the cross so that we would be dead to sin and live for righteousness. Our instant healing flowed from his wounding. A lot of other translations says, by his stripes we were healed. Notice how it says the present time. Okay, so these are quotes taken out of Isaiah. Now I want to go back to Matthew 17. And you know how it says that he took our sicknesses and removed our diseases, or the word, some translations use the word he healed our diseases. The word healed there is always used in the medical term for physical healing. For physical, mind, will, and emotion, like the emotion, that something that's physical, not the spirit. It's not talking about a spiritual healing. A lot of people take this verse and says, oh no, he healed us on the cross in the spirit. That's what Jesus did. And he didn't pay for our physical healing. But this is a prophecy that was fulfilled, showing that he would carry our diseases and he would heal all our diseases on his body, by his stripes, by his body being beaten, I believe his body received all the diseases of the world because he became a curse. So if he was cursed himself, he became the curse. Every curse was on him. All right? So healing was used as a medical term. And our spirit is not the thing that needs to be healed, because he says you are a brand new creation. You're a brand new man. So Jesus truly is enough. All right. In Galatians 2 verse 20, it says, my old identity has been crucified with Christ and no longer lives. And now the essence of this new life is no longer mine. For the Anointed One lives his life through me. We live in union as one. We live in union as one. There's so many times the Bible says we are union with one. There's a perfect connection. We are one with Christ, right? We live in union as one. My new life is empowered by I talked about faith in the last part, and it says by the faith of the Son of God. Some translations say that faith in the Son of God. It's not your ability in him to believe in him that gets you there. It is the faith of the Son of God. His faith, the faith that Jesus had, you have. He gave you the faith. All right? I've probably been staring at the wrong part of my camera, so if it looked weird that I was staring off into the abyss, but I forgot where the camera was. Forgive me. But it was by the faith of the Son of God. You look in the Greek, it's of the Son of God. The faith comes from God. It does not come from you. You don't muster it up. You don't try hard. I believe, I believe, I believe, I believe, I believe. No, when he convinces you, you're convinced, all right? It's something that just like is births inside of you, all right? Who loves me so much that he gave himself for me, dispensing his life into mine. He dispensed his life into yours, all right? That's how good he is. He loves us. Faith works in love. And so he took, in Isaiah, in the book of Isaiah, when he says that he was bruised for our iniquity. He took our shame and his body was broken for our healing. All right? He suffered in the physical, not just to save us for the sweet by and by, but to save us in this life. The word salvation is sozo. Look it up. The definition of sozo is healing and everywhere. Salvation in your body, salvation in your soul, salvation in your mind, salvation in your spirit. All right? So all of those things were included in that salvation. Sozo, it's a big word. There's so much. It's a full package in that, all right? So hear what God has to say about you. Hear him and believe. And Jesus, and it's a lot of people, they feel they get so offended when they say, well, you're saying I didn't have faith? I'm not ignoring the things that happen to people. Things have happened to us. Things have happened to me. But you know what? I will not let the circumstances of my experience define what God's will is. And one part I want to talk about yet is a lot of people that messes up their believing for healing is this thing that God is in control. God has a purpose, and therefore he controls everything that happens. Well, I'm going to say right off the bat where I can show you that God doesn't have control of everything. All right? He doesn't control you. You've probably done something stupid today, and I believe, and you would agree with me, that it was not his will that you did that, right? So does he control everything? If he controls everything, then why try? Just do whatever, all right? If he controls everything, then why do you go to the doctor? Why go to the doctor? I'm not against doctors. A lot of people say, a lot of people have a misunderstanding that if I believe in healing, that it's always God's will for you to be healed, that you shouldn't go to the doctor. Yeah, go to the doctor. I believe doctors do the will of God. They have the nature of God, and a doctor is part of the God's nature, being a doctor, because they're trying to get people well. They're trying to make them well, trying to heal people. All right, that's God's kind of work. All right, I believe that God's best, that He is our physician, He is our healer, but don't feel condemned if you go to the doctor. I've gone to the doctor. It doesn't, but I don't feel condemned for it. But you know what? I will admit I'm not always convinced. I'm doubting. I'm going by what I feel. So I'm like, I need to use a physical means to get myself better, right? But I believe God's best is His healing, perfect healing. And so don't get all worked up. I'm not against you if you go to the doctor. I'm not against you. You're not lost. You're still saved. God still loves you. And I believe God still loves dumb people. I'm sometimes stupid. I do stupid stuff. But this is the will of God, the best thing. And yet we don't have to feel condemned that we're not experiencing the best from God. All right? And He doesn't judge us. He doesn't harp on us. Hey, why didn't you do that? No. He loves us, but He has something good. Just like our children, like me as a parent, look at my children. They're not experiencing my best for them that I wish for them, but I don't hate them for it. I'm not angry. I don't judge them. I love them, and I try to teach them. And that's what God is doing. He comes alongside us and He says, "I love you. I have something better for you, but hey, I'm still with you." All right. So, yeah. What else can I say? He provided that on the cross, and I believe we need to be convinced of it, and that He is good. And I want to talk about how God has given that authority to man. He doesn't control everything. Things have been given to mankind as an authority. It doesn't mean that God fell off His throne, or that He became a lesser being because He gave authority to mankind. All right. So I'm going to explain a lot of that stuff. I believe there's a lot of confusion about that, and people get all worked up and falling off their chairs when I say God doesn't control everything. You can see it. It's just common sense. If you believe God controls everything, I don't think you believe God controls everything. I think you're trying to convince yourself that he is, but I don't think majority of people don't actually believe it. Don't actually believe it. They're going against what they're actually saying, all right? So, but he is good. And so, bless you, and we will see you next time.